room laughed at Dean's joke, but his eyes never left the VIP section. Noticed the moment his glass stopped halfway to his lips, because that's when he recognized the woman in the red dress and the mob boss who'd brought her as his date. The spotlight slid warm across Dean Martin's shoulders as he lowered the tumbler. 500 people still chuckling at the punchline. And wait, because the small thing that rewired the entire night happened less than 90 seconds before that, just outside the velvet rope when Vincent Torrino walked in with a woman Dean hadn't seen in 4 years. The orchestra held the intro to Ain't That a Kick in the Head, waiting for Dean's cue. His hand stayed suspended, the glass reflecting stage light. Dean's gaze tracked across the club to the back corner booth where Vincent Torrino, known as Vinny the Vise, sat with his arm around Catherine, Dean's ex-wife. Dean set the glass down on the piano. The crowd didn't notice. The pianist glanced up, eyebrows raised, and Dean gave him a nod so small it could have been a twitch. The band shifted into the verse. Dean sang. His voice came out smooth, controlled, but the man near the stage would say later. I swear his smile disappeared for just half a second. Write in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? And what time is it right now? Vincent lit a cigarette. Catherine sat beside him, hands folded, face angled away. The booth was elevated, a power seat. Vincent bringing Catherine there during Dean's show wasn't an accident. Vincent Torrino wasn't like other bosses. He was patient. He made moves that looked like friendship until you realized you'd been cornered. Dean had stayed clear of him, polite at parties but never taking meetings, never owing favors. And now Vincent was here, in Dean's room, with Catherine. The message was clear. Dean finished the verse and the crowd applauded. He smiled, lifted his glass, took a sip that tasted like metal. The orchestra shifted into the bridge. Dean's fingers tightened around the microphone stand just once, and the stage manager in the wings took 2 steps closer. But Dean didn't falter. He delivered the next line with perfect timing, hit the note clean. And the whole time, his eyes flicked back to that booth. Once, twice, 3 times in 40 seconds. The song ended. The crowd erupted. Dean took a small bow, turned toward the band. The orchestra leader leaned in as Dean passed. You okay, boss? Dean didn't answer. He just tapped the sheet music. Give me Memories Are Made of This. Slow tempo. The leader frowned. That wasn't on the set list, but he nodded. Dean walked to the edge of the stage. The lights dimmed, soft amber wash. He adjusted his bow tie and looked out. Vincent leaned forward, watching. Catherine sat very still. Dean started singing. The song was slower, more intimate. The microphone was cold against his lips. It was a song about lost time, about things you can't get back. But tonight, every word felt deliberate. The man at the bar would tell his wife later. He wasn't singing to the crowd. He was singing to someone. Wait, because this next detail changes everything. Halfway through the second verse, Dean's hand moved to his jacket pocket. A small motion, barely visible. He pulled out a folded cocktail napkin, glanced at it, slipped it back. The gesture took less than 2 seconds. The crowd didn't see it. But Vincent Torrino saw it, and Vincent's expression shifted. Just a fraction. The napkin had been handed to Dean 30 minutes earlier, backstage, by a man Dean had never met. The man knocked, waited, said, Mr. Martin, this is for you. No explanation. Just the napkin, folded twice, 4 words in pencil. She didn't want to come. Dean stared at it for 10 seconds, then tucked it into his pocket without saying a word. Now, on stage, Dean let the napkin sit like a stone. He finished the verse, let the band swell, and glanced at the booth again. Catherine was looking at him now. Not Vincent. Dean. Her posture had changed. She'd shifted slightly away from Vincent, one hand resting on the table edge as if preparing to stand. Dean held her gaze for 3 beats. Then he turned back and sang the final line. The applause was strong but not overwhelming. Dean nodded, stepped back, moved to the piano. He picked up his glass, took a slow sip, looked toward the wings. The stage manager was still watching. Dean gave him a small signal, index finger tapping twice against his thigh, and the manager stepped back. Everything was under control, or looked like it. Listen to how the room reacts in the next few seconds. Dean set the glass down and walked to center stage. He didn't pick up the microphone. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, relaxed. You folks having a good time tonight? Scattered applause, a few shouts. Dean smiled. Good, that's good, because I'm having a hell of a time up here. Laughter. Dean waited for it to fade. You know, I was thinking earlier about something my old man used to say. He'd tell me, Dino, some people come into your life to teach you something, and some people come into your life to remind you what you already know. More laughter, quieter now, curious. Dean paused. And sometimes you don't know which one they are until it's too late. The room went still. Dean let the moment sit. He didn't rush. He just stood there looking out, and then his eyes flicked, briefly, deliberately, to the back booth. Vincent didn't move. Catherine looked down. Dean turned back to the microphone. Let's do one more before the break. The band kicked in immediately, fast, upbeat, and the mood shifted back. People relaxed. Drinks were poured. The tension evaporated. But the man at the bar would say later, something changed in that moment. Notice what Dean saw during the next song. The stage manager had moved and was now near the back exit, talking to someone Dean couldn't see. 20 seconds. Then the manager nodded, turned, walked toward the front of house. Dean kept singing, but part of his attention stayed on that exit. The band hit the final chorus. Dean held the last note and the crowd erupted. He bowed, waved, walked off stage. Backstage, Dean found Tony, the security chief. Tell me. Torrino's been here since 8. Came with the woman, reserved the booth, paid cash, no muscle with him. Dean thought about that. Vincent never went anywhere alone. After the second set, I'm going to walk over to that booth. I need you close. Not visible, just close. Tony's jaw tightened. You sure? Yeah. Dean turned, walked back to his dressing room, changed shirts, checked his reflection, sat down. The napkin was still in his pocket. He pulled it out, unfolded it, read the words again. She didn't want to come. He stared at the handwriting. Neat, precise parochial school script. Someone had wanted Dean to know. But why? And who? The assistant knocked. 5 minutes, Mr. Martin. Dean folded the napkin, put it back, stood, rolled his neck, adjusted his cuffs, walked back toward the stage. The crowd noise was building. Dean stepped into the wings and waited. Lights dimmed. Band started. Dean walked out into the spotlight. The second set opened with That's Amore, and the room responded immediately. People sang along, clapped, raised glasses. Dean moved through the song with ease, but his eyes kept returning to the back booth. Vincent was still there. Catherine was still beside him. Nothing had changed, except it had, because now Dean knew she hadn't wanted to come. The song ended. Dean transitioned into Volare, then You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You, then a medley that kept the energy high. He joked between songs, sipped his drink, played the room, and the entire time he was thinking, planning, deciding what he was going to say when he walked over to that booth. Remember the way Dean's smile changed after the third song. It didn't disappear. It just became something else. Harder, sharper, the kind that didn't reach the eyes. A woman in the front row would tell her husband later. He looked like a man who'd made up his mind. The set continued. Dean sang. The band played. The room stayed locked in. And in the back booth, Vincent leaned over and whispered something to Catherine. She didn't respond. She just stared at the stage. The final number ended with a flourish. The crowd stood, applauding, cheering. Dean smiled, waved. You've been a beautiful audience. Thank you. Good night. He bowed, turned, walked off stage. The lights came up. The crowd began moving toward exits. Dean didn't go to his dressing room. He stayed in the wings, watching. Floor staff cleared tables. Bartenders poured last calls. And in the back booth, Vincent stood, helped Catherine to her feet, started walking toward the exit. Dean waited until they were halfway across the floor. Then he stepped out and walked straight toward them. The room was still crowded, people milling around. But as Dean moved through the space, heads turned. Whispers started. The man at the bar put down his glass. The woman in the front row nudged her husband. Even the bartender stopped. Dean reached the booth just as Vincent and Catherine were stepping down. Vincent saw him first. He stopped. His expression didn't change, but his body language shifted. Shoulders back, chin up. Catherine looked at Dean, then Vincent, then back. She opened her mouth, but Dean spoke first. Vincent. Dean. Vincent's voice was smooth. Hell of a show. Thanks. They stood there. 2 men in expensive suits, surrounded by a thinning crowd, neither moving. Tony appeared at the edge of the floor, 20 feet away, arms crossed. Vincent noticed. So did Dean. Dean's eyes shifted to Catherine. You look well. She didn't respond immediately. Then quietly, "Thank you." Dean nodded. He looked back at Vincent. "Can I talk to you for a second, just the two of us?" Catherine's eyes widened slightly. Vincent's smile didn't falter. "Sure, why not?" He turned to Catherine. "Wait here." She hesitated, stepped back toward the booth. Vincent and Dean walked a few paces away, far enough that their voices wouldn't carry. The room around them continued to empty, but the space around Dean and Vincent felt isolated. Dean stopped. Vincent stopped beside him. They were close now, close enough that Dean could smell the cigarette smoke on Vincent's jacket, could see the fine weave of his tie. The floor beneath them was sticky with spilled drinks. Somewhere behind them, a busboy dropped a tray, and the crash echoed. Neither man flinched. Dean looked Vincent in the eye. "I know why you brought her." "Do you?" "Yeah, you wanted to send a message. You wanted to remind me that you can reach into my life whenever you want. You wanted me to see her sitting next to you and understand that nothing I have is off limits." Vincent's smile widened. "That's a lot of assumptions." "Is it? Maybe I just wanted to see a good show." Dean let the silence sit. Around them, stragglers gathered coats, finished drinks, moved toward exits. A woman laughed. A chair scraped. The overhead lights revealed stains the stage lighting had hidden. Then Dean leaned in, close enough that only Vincent could hear, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, and spoke one sentence. 7 words. Quiet. Deliberate. Delivered in a tone that carried no anger, no threat, just absolute certainty. And when he finished, he stepped back, turned, and walked toward the stage exit. He didn't look at Catherine. He didn't look at Vincent. He just walked, footsteps steady, hands loose, posture relaxed. But the part that changes everything happened 12 hours later. The next morning, Vincent Torrino checked out of his hotel, canceled his remaining Vegas reservations, and caught a flight to Miami. He didn't tell anyone why. He just left. And he never came back to Nevada. Not for business, not for pleasure, not ever. Catherine stayed in Vegas for 2 more days. She called Dean's assistant, asked to speak to him. The assistant said Dean was unavailable. She tried again the next day. Same answer. On the 3rd day, she left. No one saw her again either. The man at the bar would tell this story for the rest of his life. So would the woman in the front row. So would Tony, though he never confirmed what Dean said to Vincent. When pressed, Tony would just shake his head. Whatever it was, it worked. Years later, a journalist asked Dean about that night. The journalist had heard rumors. He asked Dean if it was true that he'd confronted a mob boss. Dean sipped his drink, smiled. "I've confronted a lot of people in a lot of clubs. You'll have to be more specific." Vincent Torrino, 1962. The Sands. Dean's smile didn't change. "Never heard of him." "What did you say to him?" Dean looked at the journalist for a long moment. "If I told you, it wouldn't mean anything. The words only mattered to him. And since he's not here to confirm or deny, I think we'll leave it at that." The journalist pushed. Dean didn't budge. The interview ended, but people who were there agree. Dean carried a message he didn't ask to receive. He performed under the gaze of a man who wanted to humiliate him, and he never flinched. He finished his show, walked across the floor, and said something that made one of Vegas's most powerful men disappear overnight, without raising his voice, without throwing a punch. The woman in the red dress never spoke about that night. Vincent never returned to Nevada, and Dean went back to work, singing the same songs. But people who knew him said something shifted. He was still Dean, still smooth, but there was a line now, and everyone understood. You didn't cross it. Dean had lost people, been betrayed, signed divorce papers, stood on stages in empty rooms, been underestimated, and every time he'd kept moving. Not because he was fearless, but because he understood something Vincent didn't. Power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can protect. And that night, Dean protected the one thing that mattered, his ability to walk away on his own terms. The final image people remember isn't Dean on stage. It's Dean walking through the side exit, shoulders square, disappearing into the Vegas night, alone, free, one whisper, one night, one choice that echoed for years, and Vincent Torrino never came back.